And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
And happy Saint Valentine's Day to all. And because you must know we don't do this live on Saturday mornings, we recorded it yesterday, Friday the 13th. And hopefully all of you made it through unscathed on that momentous day. And please, before we go any further, take a moment to like, share, subscribe to this unedited, unrehearsed, unscripted Saturday morning's best 60-ish seconds of your week. We don't really know that much about Saint Valentine. His life and ministry were at such a point where there wasn't a lot of written history, but we do know that he was a Christian martyr who gave up his life for the sake of the gospel. He was either a bishop or a priest who was marrying couples. And the emperor at that time, Claudius the Cruel, think about that, he was a real nutcase, by the way, had outlawed marriage because he thought that the Roman army was suffering because guys would rather be married and stay home with a wife than go out and march in the infantry with the Roman Empire. And Claudius saw a real threat from Valentine. He imprisoned him, ordered him to be beaten, tortured, and then beheaded. And while he was in jail, he apparently caused the jailer's daughter to be relieved of her blindness, which made him a pretty good friend of the jailer. And apparently he had a loving, if not romantic, relationship with the jailer's daughter. His last missive to her, he had written her a lot of letters apparently while in prison, was signed, "Your Valentine." And so that's the genesis of so much of what we celebrate today. But he was a martyr to the end, a saint in the church, and we give thanks for Saint Valentine's life and for the day that he represents. And from such lofty and romantic highs to the Olympic Games, the Winter Olympics in full swing now. And, it just has to happen that some American athlete has to shoot off their mouth about what a terrible country the United States of America is while representing us abroad. The rule used to be that our politics ended at the water's edge. And that should still be the rule for both sides, for every point of view. We have our disputes at home. We do not air them in front of the world stage. And frankly, I don't take my political advice or policy decisions from downhill skiers or figure skaters, so it doesn't really matter. But it just irks me that we pay and contribute to training, housing, transporting, clothing, etc. These athletes who then show up to badmouth the United States of America. It's just not right. And the rest of the Olympics shines in glory by comparison. And in those shining moments come my favorite Olympic sports, curling. I thought my son, the football player, would make great fun of me for saying I liked curling. But when I told him, I said, "Oh, Dad, I love curling." He said, "In fact, I'm thinking about going to a school to learn how to curl." That's just how much that sport has pervaded American society. I also like that biathlon, where they have to ski and then shoot. That's true athletic ability when you think about it. And the heavy-duty sports now, Olympic hockey in full swing as the Americans beat the Latvians last night. That would have been Thursday night. Despite having 2 goals called back on them, they still managed to command a 5-1 victory over Latvia with a lot of NHL stars in their ranks. And the thing that is very interesting to me about the Olympics, both winter and summer, is that we have stretched the abilities of human competition to their outermost margins. There really isn't much left in terms of what humans have the capacity to do. So you're having these records set by split seconds and races won by split seconds. And it's just kind of interesting to me that we really have gone about as far as we can for right now. Genetics hasn't caught up. Genetics has a dramatic impact on Olympic sports over 100 years, but over 10 or 20, not so much. And just sticking with sports for a minute, since we last spoke, the Super Bowl was held. I watched, I slept, I didn't even see the halftime show, thank God. But enough said. I saw that map of the United States that had a little green circle around Seattle and a little blue one around Boston, and the entire rest of the country shaded red, which stood for waiting for baseball season to arrive. And Pitchers and catchers are reporting as we speak, so the days of summer can't be far off, and America's pastime will be back in full swing in just a few days. And presidential politics are already being talked about as the 2026 midterms loom. 2028 conversations are right in the midst. And a lot of governors are talking about running for president on the Democrat side, from the governor of California to the governor of Maryland to our own Josh Shapiro here in my home state of Pennsylvania. The problem is for Josh Shapiro that he keeps having all these little incidents, and some of them not so little, frankly, pop up that are going to cause him problems, in my judgment, down the road. This week, he got into a squabble with his neighbors over a property line. Now, that may or may not be all that consequential in and of itself, but what he did through all this process was just a caricature of a man who is possessed of power and is a tyrant at least, and maybe worse. There's now a federal lawsuit filed by a friend of ours, Wally Zimmerman, a crackerjack attorney and a bulldog in the courtroom. So Josh Shapiro is going to have some splaining to do, especially since he trots out the argument of adverse possession, something a lot of non-lawyers may not be familiar with. But I got to tell you, as a lawyer who doesn't play one on TV, I think he's got a steep hill to climb on that legal theory. And the SAVE Act passed this week, at least in the House of Representatives. It's got a much tougher road to hoe in the Senate, but it's really interesting to hear the Democrat rhetoric. And by the way, there was a Democrat that crossed party lines to vote with the Republicans in favor of the SAVE Act. They used to scream and cry about voter ID, but then they read the polls which show that roughly 85% of the American people think voter ID is a good idea, since we're required to show ID for virtually everything else in our lives. And so they now say, well, we're okay with voter ID, but it's these additional requirements to vote. Well, yes and no. It's not to vote, it's to register to vote. You only got to do it once. And they have provided every out for folks that might have legitimate difficulty coming up with a naturalization certificate or something to do it by affidavit. So it really is specious on the part of the Democrats to argue as they do, but they will. The reason there's going to be trouble passing it in the Senate, of course, is because of the filibuster rule, which the Democrats tried to get rid of not that long ago, but which now they're going to employ in order to block the passage of the SAVE Act. Let's hope that cooler heads will prevail over there, that the Democrats will see the not only will of the American people, but the best way to govern by not letting foreign nationals vote in American elections. And for those of the Christian faith, of course, this week begins the season of Lent. And so I just want to wish all a very blessed and holy Lent, remembering that we are dust, and to dust we shall return. And a very happy, wonderful, and romantic Saint Valentine's Day to all, because for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.